All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It looks like we're from all over the country, which is kind of neat. My name's Angela Anderson Connolly. I teach at Emerson College along with my colleague Tim Riley, who's joining us today. I asked Tim to talk about Substack. I'm going to tell a little story and then I'll let him get into it. Um, Last summer, he started doing a newsletter on Substack, and I kept hearing about Substack, and I knew nothing about it, but he was tackling this new way of communicating. And I think it's something we're all going to need to learn how to do because newsletters are really important and ways to communicate other than the traditional media also really important. So I thought I would have Tim come in. He's written widely about the Beatles and rock history and music, and has a Substack now that involves music. I'll let him explain it and maybe talk to us a little bit about how he's using Substack to get his material published, kind of cutting out the middleman a little bit, which is something we all like to do. So, Tim, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Angela. It's fun to be asked to do this, and I'm going to give you my introductory remarks on Substack, really down low to the ground, like right as it's happening. I'm supposed to have an issue come out tomorrow, and I've decided this week did not work in my favor, so I'm actually going to put off my issue to next week. And that's really one of the cool things about Substack is that you just get to control every single aspect of it. So I'll walk you through all that. I'm going to take a couple steps back and talk about how I got to Substack and why I think it's useful for me to be there. So as Angela said, I'm a music critic. Most people know me as a Beatles scholar. I have 3 books on the Beatles and a major biography of John Lennon. And as many of you know, the Phoenix went under, about 10 years ago. And it really got me thinking because I had PDFs of all the stuff that I had done when I worked for the Phoenix. So I came to Boston in 1988, and I came to Boston specifically to write for the Phoenix because I was visiting a friend up here, and the Phoenix clearly had the best music pages in the country. And I was a really ambitious young music critic, and I was able to get into the Phoenix and write a column for them. And the Phoenix was a really big piece of my education. I worked for the very best editor I'd ever written for up to that point when I arrived at the Boston Phoenix. But so when the Phoenix went under, I started thinking about all these pieces I had written for the Phoenix and that were basically lost. Now I had some hard copies and I started making some PDFs of them, but I decided it'd be interesting just to kind of go back and reread through them and see what was there. And with all humility, I have to say, a lot of this stuff just held up really nicely. And it was really interesting to read many years later, like how I had approached certain contemporary topics at the time, because one of my big preoccupations as a music critic is, things happen a certain way in contemporary life, and then history actually reflects a different light on them. And there's always that tension between the way people experience it in the moment and then the way history looks at it. And that's just something I've just become fascinated with over the years working on the Beatles, because the Beatles occupy a certain space in our mind, and it's changed a lot since when the Beatles were alive and kicking and were a working band, a working recording band. So I decided I'd go through these Phoenix articles, and what I found, I was really reassured to find that I had not only the writing was holding up, but it was just an interesting point of view on a lot of the material. For instance, going and covering Sonic Youth for the very first time in 1989. So that was my first exposure to the band. We'd heard them on record, but seeing them live was a very different thing, and just writing about that experience. And so I began to think, I think I might have something here. And I went back. The other thing I did when I got to Boston was I started working for WBUR's Morning Edition and filing music reports for them. And I jumped over to the National and I did a lot of music reports for Morning Edition. And over the years, that's been my sort of main public profile, is writing books and being on NPR. And I went back and listened to some of these NPR stories, and I thought, some of this stuff's holding up pretty well too. So I started throwing together an anthology of my work over the past 40 years, and just try to see how it would hang together. And then COVID came, and COVID really plunged us into darkness and loneliness, isolation. And I just sort of got in this, and I just sort of burrowed down and worked really hard on it. And I got a faculty grant that wasn't very big. It was only $6,000, but I was able to spend 3,000 on design and another 3,000 on marketing. So I got some good advice about the space. And I developed this ebook that is an 800-page monstrosity. And the working title was Millennium Pop. And I'm going to take you through some visuals now before. So this is all leading up to Substack, I promise, but it is sort of just the way that. So this is sort of a promo thing that I put together uh, for the Substack. It's sort of a marketing deck, right? But it gives you an idea of some of the visuals, right? So what I wanted to do was I got these great designers to lay this thing out for me. And I was really happy all these different sections came together. So I have a Dylan book, and I have a lot of articles that I wrote about Dylan that did not appear in the book. I also cross over and do classical. And then I decided I wanted to do all these fun extra things with the book, so that you see here at the top of a chapter, it says listen to the audio chapter. So I'm actually recording narration to every single chapter so that you can actually listen to it as an audiobook if you want. And
Wait,
at the end of every chapter,
Tim,
there
I
are.
can
Are
see your
you trying to
screen share.
share? Because we're not seeing it.
Oh,
We're
you're
not
not
seeing your
seeing it.
screen share.
Nope.
Oh my goodness. I forgot to screen share. I'm just so okay. Here, I'll show you that. There. Can you see that now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we can
Okay.
see it.
All right. I forgot to share. So this is just a marketing deck that shows, and the working title is Millennium Pop, and we're still tweaking the title a little bit, but I really like all the colors, how the colors came out, and how the different section headers came out. So you can see all those big, bright, popping colors there. I collected all the NPR articles. I had articles. I'd written a book on Dylan, and I had a bunch of articles that did not appear in the book, so I gathered them here. And this was our layout here for each chapter. So this is from the Dylan chapter. And at the beginning of this chapter here, you see it says listen to audio. And this is what I'm doing is I'm going through and actually narrating, reading the copy out loud, so that I'm combining an audiobook with an ebook. And at the end of each chapter, I'm giving extra links, and also links to the music I'm writing about in this chapter to Apple Music or Spotify. Right. So I thought this was sort of like really fun and innovative and electronic. I was really disappointed in the state of electronic books at that point. And it seemed to me like people needed to take more advantage of reading a book online. But I had a really hard time selling this thing. So publishers get very antsy about certain things. And one of the things they get antsy about is copyright permissions and licensing for songs, right? But I promise you, I lead with this. I lead the pitch meeting with there's no audio in this book. There's no music in this book. All the audio is just me talking, and we link to outside streams. And they still get very paranoid about, oh, well, we don't have the permission from the Beatles to stream this stuff. It's like, you don't need the permission from the Beatles. If you're going to Apple, if you're going to Spotify, that's totally fair. You're just linking to another service. But for whatever reason, publishers are really hung up on this. It's really an interesting sort of, it's an example of groupthink. They all think they're all just paranoid about this stuff. And I've also been advised not to talk about it as an ebook, because ebooks are just kind of boring. And so nobody wants ebooks. And it's my observation that we're really in a space where innovation for an ebook is just ready to happen. I can't believe that no other music critic has done this, put together a thing that actually combines some cool visuals with some audio narration and with links to streaming. Because in music criticism, you want to inspire people to go listen to music. So how cool is that to have a link at the end of every chapter? So anyway, so I had this big project and no one was buying it. So I thought, well, what do I do with this now? So I had to do plan B, and I've been doing some other book pitches and figuring out some other projects. But meanwhile, I had all this stuff laid out, and I had all this content, and Substack was starting. And Substack, it's very interesting. Substack is a newsletter platform that allows the writer to set up their own newsletter and control it, and actually set up payments for the newsletter where you share, I think it's 10% with Substack, and the rest of it you get to keep. So it's actually a pretty good business model for writers who are freelancers and who want to get in the game and sort of control their own publication, right? And Substack started up 2-3 years ago, and last year it started really getting lots of big traction. And it's developing its own identity in some certain curious ways. And one of the ways that Substack is beginning to become known is as a platform specifically for music writers. Some of this is because Substack actually has capabilities that are a little bit above and beyond what some other places have. And now I'm going to open up my browser and take you over to Substack because it's time to do that. And I will share my screen here. Boom. So this is my Substack dashboard, right? So there it is. Here it is. This is loading. This is what I see. This is sort of the backstage.
Can you make it a little bigger, Tim, anyway?
Yeah. How's that? Is that better?
Better. Thank
Okay.
you. Yes.
Yep. Okay, so this is backstage at my Substack, and my Substack, the official page looks different if you go to it, but I get back here, I get back, publish home, and this is where I'm putting together, my latest article. So this is the last post that I did, and I pegged it to Seiji Ozawa's as sort of a tribute to Seiji Ozawa, and I could look at the post here. And this was literally a piece of writing I did for Boston Magazine back in 1993 when Seiji Ozawa was conducting and celebrating his 20th year at the head of the Boston Symphony. And so I wrote up a short intro to it. Right, this is just me saying, oh, this is how I'm thinking about Ozawa now. And here's the original text. And I just went back over this original text and plugged it in here. And since it's very long, this piece is about 3,000 words, I just link to it on my website here. So you don't read the whole thing here. You actually, if you're into it, you go and you read, you finish reading it on my website, right? And that's another piece of control that I have over this material. Not everybody who reads my newsletter is going to want 3,000 words or 5,000 words on Seiji Ozawa. So I can just say, hey, I've written about it. And if you want to keep going, you keep going. But then I also have these other little goodies at the end, right? So I like to put extra information at the bottom, like these are the key people who have weighed in and have really interesting statements to say in their obituaries about Ozawa. This is a group of his discography, the best things that he's done in recording. So I have extra links there. And then I like to share a playlist of the month or an album of the month. And this is a new artist I've just discovered, so I wanted to feature her in my new playlist. And then this is a gift that an Emerson student gave me. Can you see this? So that's just like the coolest t-shirt anyone has ever given me. I just love that. And that just is a little extra. And then down here, I have some anchor links that just go to places on my website that are featured. So this was, from my point of view, this was really like low-hanging fruit, right? This was a piece of content that I already had that was sitting in an archive that would never have reappeared again unless I published it. And I got letters from London on this. So it really got great play, and it was really easy to put together. And I'll show you some of the mechanics of putting this stuff together, which make it really easy to do. So here I have drafts over here. Here's my latest post. It gives me, this is how many people have read it. This is the percentage of people who have opened it of my subscriber list. And that's a really important number. And that's a really good, respectable number. I'm still growing my subscribership. So there's people who have 10,000. One of my former students, Angela, you remember Hunter Harris?
I do, yes.
Yeah, so Hunter Harris, she was a student of mine in cultural criticism, and she has started a newsletter on Substack called Hung Up, and she has over 80,000 subscribers. And if you get to that number, she has 10% of people are paying her whatever it is, $60 a year. And you do the math on that, and it's like, that's a pretty respectable, that's pretty cool, right? So there are some real big success stories here on Substack. And there's already a little bit of controversy breaking out about those success stories. So some people are saying, oh, I'm doing so well that I don't even want to share 10% with Substack. And there's new competition coming up. Ty Burr, who used to be the movie critic for the Boston Globe, he is now moving from Substack to a new platform called Ghost, for several reasons, but one of them he gave is that they have a better deal for people there. So here's to capitalism, go capitalism. But I thought it would be fun to just walk you through exactly how I put one of these together. So here's where I go to posts, and what I have is a little, this is being really slow, of course, for Zoom. It's loading very slowly. Oh yeah. So I actually do go over here. I go to home, and I go to recent posts. Yes, and then I have drafts. And I have here a draft called RRIR. This is my template. And what I do is I just make a duplicate of that, right? And this will deliver me to my template, to the copy, and it says copy. So this is the copy. So I know I'm not working with the original. I'm always saving the original. And this is my little dummied up newsletter where I have all of my style matters listed out here. And this is my slug. And here's my opening paragraph that I do in ital. And I always boldface the first 3 words. That's just my style. And then I have other buttons and stuff going down. But you can see I have this all sort of just mocked up on a template. And what I do is I go in and I plug in new information every couple of weeks. I made a couple decisions early on about how I was going to do it. I didn't want a weekly grind. I didn't think it would be good for me and my schedule to do a weekly publication. So I do every other week, but it's totally up to the writer how often they want to publish. And there are people who are publishing several times a week. And they find that actually is really good. Like, readers really like multiple times a week. I'm just not able to do that. I don't have the bandwidth. The other decision I made early on was I'm going to be free for at least the first couple of years just while I grow my subscribership. And if I do jump to a paid model, and it does look like that would be a worthwhile move for me, I'll probably do it very slowly, very incrementally, and it will be grandfathering in all the free people to the paid mode, and then having some kind of extras for paid subscribers every couple of weeks. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can offer downloads. You can offer access to additional material. You can fence off certain things for paid subscribers. They make it really easy. So those are the couple of decisions that I made. I understand how if you're giving something away for free, that there's a perceived value concept there, that the people might not take you as seriously if you're free. And I just think that one of the challenges that we have with Substack is that I very quickly got up to like 4 or 5 paid subscriptions, and I was like tapped out. Like, nobody's going to carry more than like 3 or 4 subscriptions at a time. Or let's say like the average person is not going to carry more than that. And that long term on Substack, we really need to be thinking, well, how much per year are people going to be willing to pay? And how much content do you have? And I think a lot of Substack buzz right now is based on a lot of the same early buzz that blogs were based on, which is, oh, I've got a blog and you've got a blog. Everyone's got a blog. And then after a couple of years, everyone's like, God, it's really hard producing content week after week. And it's like, yeah, that's the drill. That's what journalists do. So I just decided I would keep it free for a while, and I would figure out the paid options later on. But there are people who have successfully grown their newsletters using the paid option. One thing I like about Substack, it gives me the option. The other thing I like about it, and I can show you this, is this thing here, this narration here. This is literally me narrating a certain issue, but it's so easy to add. So I will tape it, and I will you go over here, let's see, let's just do this. And you put in, this is a recording, this is a voiceover and an audio embed. The voiceover is actually new. The voiceover is actually signaling that this is me reading the thing. And I should go back and change these to voiceovers because these are all voiceovers. But I have been using audio embeds, but here I just upload my MP4 here, or I can record it straight from the desktop. And once I upload it, here, I'll show you how that works. Let's see, let's just go to, find an AAC file. No, yeah, here we go. Oh, here we go. So, right, if I upload this AAC file, I'm going to do a smaller file here. It goes there and it processes it. And then it gives me a link and it just clicks this into this beautiful little player right here, right in the site. Now, I had started out on MailChimp first because someone had recommended that to me at a conference I met, and MailChimp did not. So this is it right there. So upload, right? Okay, so that's the,
I'm wondering, can you talk about how easy this is to use? I mean, is the interface easy or do you need to know coding? Do you need to know?
yeah, that's what I'm trying to show you here is when I'm gonna post this audio, and this is the new audio, and you'll see it posted right here in just a second. Where did it go? There, this is the article voiceover that I just put up there. Right? So that was no coding, right? That was me just grabbing an audio file and it put it up there. So that's what I was demonstrating. I hope that was really clear. There's no coding there. There's no coding here, right? If I just want to start writing in here, it'll just like that'll be, and I do copy and paste all the time with text files. I paste stuff in, then you just grab it and reformat it. If you want this to be ital, you just do regular. It's almost as simple as working in a word processing software. So yeah, I like this a lot. And the same thing with the images. I go through, if I delete this image, I can just go insert another image here. And you go here and you say insert an image, add an image, or add a gallery. They give you access to stock images too. Let's see what kind of a image I can grab here. Yeah, here's an image. All right, so we grab that, we put it just dumps it right in there for you. There it is, boom. Then you put your caption under here, and it's just, I mean, it really could not be easier. So what then the final thing is you go here and it says, oh, when do you want to publish it? And it says, oh, okay, so we'll publish it at this time. So publish it tomorrow at 9 a.m. and you save that. Where's the a.m.? You save that and it's going to send to everyone tomorrow. It'll just automatically save that and do it. Invalid. Yeah, it needs me to fill this out better. But so I can pre-publish, I can get a whole bunch of issues in the pipeline before I even do it, and they'll all go out automatically to everyone who signed up. Then I should take you backstage a little bit to show you some of the data that it shares with you when you're backstage. So
Can
if
I
I go
ask
back,
a question? Was it hard to get people to sign up for your newsletter?
so the marketing thing is kind of a constant thing that you're doing. And one of the things that's happening with Substack is that it is sort of turning into a new social media platform. So I'll show you a couple other features here. People on Substack are actually dropping notes. There's two forms. One is called notes and one is called, yeah, I want to get to just there. So this is what my page looks like in public, and I feature the current issue in the top. But people are doing notes now, and notes are really sort of just short things, plugs, or you can what they call restack other people, right? So I restacked Joyce Vance's thing today. I restacked this one. and just notified that she made my best of my best of list from last year, this person. So these are my notes that you drop, and they also have chats, right? You can chat with your subscribers, you can chat with other people. And yesterday they just added direct messages. So if I go find someone, and you can, like, because I subscribe to Seymour Hersh's newsletter. So Seymour Hersh, Pulitzer Prize winning investigative reporter, he has a Substack, and he's publishing, like, he's breaking news on Substack. And I could go send him a DM and say, hey, I thought you did great with this. I'd like to see what you think about this. And I can actually, like, start a conversation with him. So it's an interesting new kind of space that's developing, because they figured out that there's a community of writers that wants to talk with each other and that is interested in reading one another and discussing the craft of writing. And then that a subspecialty of that is turning out to be music writing. So there's a lot of music writers on here. Greil Marcus is on here, Robert Christgau, from the old editor of the Village Voice, music section of the Village Voice. Greil Marcus is the author of Mystery Train. They're doing basically what I'm doing. They're taking old pieces and pegging them to anniversaries and using it as a way of keeping some old stuff alive and filling up the current space with older content. But here it looks like I've just, like, published stuff like crazy, but I've only been doing this for 18 months. This is a little stand that you can manage, a little sidebar that these are the people that I'm recommending that you go see. These are the ones that I read regularly, or these are also places where I've appeared as a guest columnist in different areas. So it's got multimedia. You can post both audio and video. There's no coding involved, and it puts you in touch with your core people, your co-content creators, who are busy making connections with people who are really interested in exploring this space. And it just makes all kinds of sense for me to be doing this. So I wanted to do a little bit of background to show you how, like, I was taking a book project and actually, like, turning it into a Substack newsletter, but they're going to be feeding off each other, because ultimately what I probably am going to do is self-publish that ebook, and I will be offering it at a discount to all my subscribers on Substack. And they will have become familiar with some of that older material, and they hopefully will want to read more of it, right? And I'm interspersing older material with new contemporary reviews. So I wrote a review of the Taylor Swift film last summer, and I had an angle nobody else had, and that's going to go right in the book. But the people who are subscribing to the newsletter are going to get both at the same time: historical vantage and then contemporary vantage too. That's the idea. So let's go to questions now. Yeah.
A couple of questions. We have one from Christy that she wants to know if the posts show up in Google or other searches. Also, you can jump in with questions. That's fine.
That's a really good question, and I'll show you what happens when you get to a place where it's archived. They do show up, because look at how this most recent one shows up. And I did this specifically. I got Seiji Ozawa's name. Oh, I got to turn on my screen share. Sorry, here we go. Here we go. So the Seiji Ozawa thing shows up looking like this. And in the URL, I made sure to get the word Seiji Ozawa. So yes, all of the same search spiders search this URL and grab this and list it as, oh, that's probably an article about Seiji Ozawa, and that gets shared on all the regular search engines.
I don't know if you can see the other questions, but Christy also wants to know, does this live, like, on your website, or do you do it separately?
It's separately. So Substack hosts it, and I get this proprietary URL, which I'm calling RileyRockReport.substack.com. Most of the Substackers are like, first name, last name, Substack.com or whatever. And I include many links to my homepage throughout my newsletter, but Substack hosts both the audio and the text, right? And that's a big plus, that they're hosting all this stuff and they're archiving it, and then they're giving me all this data about how many people are looking at it. So it's a pretty good service, especially if you're like, I don't know, if if people are paying for it, that data becomes really valuable, right? Then you could say, oh, I have a list of 5,000 music fans, and you can go to an advertiser or you can go to a vendor and say, like, you want me to plug your product or whatever, and you have a certain subscribership that's worth leveraging. For me, it really works out well because it's free and they're not charging me to host all this content, right? They consider it an advantage for them to feature a critic like me. So it's win-win.
Do they have different levels that you can pay with better, like other things, or is it all just free?
It's basically, as far as I know, there might be bells and whistles if you want to pay extra. There's a couple different controversies that have erupted on Substack that are worth mentioning. One is that it was very widely publicized that they actually paid advances to certain big writers to come appear on Substack and be like star writers on Substack, right? So they were giving advances 20, 30, 50K for, Stephen King or Neil Gaiman or um, whoever to be and to be a draw. And there was initially some kind of people were flustered by that, and that's not fair. And I just thought, well, that's just the way they're playing the game, right? They're just busy trying to attract people to Substack, and that's how they're doing it. I didn't have a problem with that. The other big controversy, much bigger controversy on Substack this year especially, has been hate speech and how Substack has been handling hate speech. So we do have people who are posting Nazi propaganda on Substack. And yeah, and it's vile, it's bad. And there's been a huge uproar about it. And I think everyone has to make up their own mind about how they're going to deal with it. One of the reasons Ty Burr says that he's leaving Substack is because of this, and he did not like their early responses to this hate speech stuff. Um, my understanding from a lot of the other people that I've been reading about on this controversy is that it's much less than 1% of Substack is devoted to this kind of thing, and that any platform that you get on Facebook or Google or Twitter, wherever it is going to have, right, offensive speech that you don't like. And I'm enough of a First Amendment advocate that I always think the remedy is more speech, not enforced silence. So that's kind of my position on that. And I'm kind of waiting and seeing if it gets worse, if it gets better. I do think that Substack kind of fumbled the ball early on when they started talking about this. They didn't really have a journalism perspective on it, but they did actually get their act together and issue some better statements later on. So they're kind of growing into the space just the same way all of these other people have been. And everyone wants it both ways. They want to host all this content, but they don't want to be a media company. It's like crazy. You're a media company. You're a new, different kind of media company. And you're going to learn all the same lessons that we've been learning in media the whole time. And, for Zuckerberg to be really adamant that he's not a media company, it's kind of ridiculous, especially at this point, right? I mean, he's hosting all of this stuff. It's really kind of crazy.
Do you
Speaking of media copyright, I guess oh, sorry, Sharon. I was going to ask him the other question, then I'll let you go. Carolyn was asking about legal permission from your publications to use your material.
Yeah,
Like,
so good question. I have no
you
idea.
have to ask them?
All right, so the Phoenix is dead, so I don't have to ask them. But I consider my byline on the review that I'm writing is my copyright. NPR, I have not asked NPR, but I have also looked for all of these pieces on NPR, and they're not hosted on NPR anywhere that I can find. So I'm the only one hosting them, and I would love it if NPR would come after me and I could cause a big fracas and make a big noise about how they're challenging me and they don't want me to be posting my old NPR stories from 20 years ago. They want to. I was like, well, if you want to host them, I'll link to you. But if you're not hosting them, I'm going to go ahead and host them. I would really love to see how a legal wrangle like that would shake down. Um, and I own all the copyright on my books, so that's okay. And I own the copyright on, whenever I write for the Los Angeles Review of Books or Truthdig or anywhere else, I always say to them, I'm writing for you and you're paying me, but you don't own this content, right? I own the copyright on this content.
All right, so I have two questions. The first question is, do you enable comments on your Substack? And then do you review? I mean, because if there are Nazis or whatever on Substack, like how do you prevent like horrible comments on your content
Yeah.
Is there a way to review all the comments, or you just not do comments? And
Yes.
then a second
So
question.
I have left my comments open and I haven't had a problem yet, but that's part of the double-edged sword that comes with success, is that you have to deal with, um, you know, these people who just these trolls who really just enjoy kicking up dust on the comments. And I've read about some people having to turn comments off or take comments down. And that seems to me just part of the game that you're playing here on the web, is if you're going to have comments, and I'll keep making a decision about that as we go forward. I haven't had any nasty trolls come visit my site. Um, I imagine I'll feel differently about it on the other side of it if somebody decides to come and poop on my site. But again, I'm a free speech advocate. I'm really, really pretty. I would really like people to engage with my content and disagree with me, as long as it's a civil disagreement. I think that's actually enhances the content. So I'd like to wait and see how that develops, but I'm anticipating that the troll, once you get popular, the trolls want to come and tell you you don't know what you're doing.
And then my other question was just for students. So how might a student use Substack if, especially if they don't have a ton of already published content that they wanted to share? Like, what do you envision students, can they use it as their portfolio? Or do you think that it would be something for them to think about using in their student newsrooms? Like, what's your thoughts on how students could apply this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know if our student newspaper is the Berkeley Beacon. I don't think they have a Substack, but I know they have a website. I'm not even sure they have a newsletter. Our radio station has a newsletter, right? But they don't go through Substack. They go through something else. But I have noticed a couple students jumping onto Substack, and they already they're putting their articles up there. They're also doing things like just keeping a journal of, like, these are the movies that I've been watching and stuff like that. And because you have so much freedom, it's a great way to sort of say, oh, I've got a writing commitment this week. I want to push out an issue this week, and keeps you writing, right? So I think it's a good option for students if you want to introduce it to them as like a way of having a clip file or a portfolio. Like if you're an employer and you say, "Oh, I've been running my own Substack for a couple of years," I think that's a plus, and it actually gives, like, you don't have to create a new portfolio for your writing. That's actually would be a pretty interesting use of that. I bet you could search through Substack and find some of that already.
I was gonna see if there's more students that have questions. I'm gonna unpin us so that everybody can see everybody. Cause then like maybe feel free also to turn your camera on if you want to and just engage. Let me see. I'm gonna unpin us so then that we can see everybody here. Hold on. Let me just unpin me. All right.
While she's doing that, Tim, one of the other questions we had is the trolls. Can you unsubscribe them or do they belong to Substack itself?
Oh, that's
So
a
if you
good
get,
question. Uh,
yeah.
I feel so lucky that I haven't had this problem yet. Um, but I imagine they have a blocking mechanism the way they do in other. So I can block if people are posting notes that I don't want to see, I can block them, right? And I imagine they have the same for if you have a troll and they happen to be a subscriber, you can just ditch them. Just say, look, you're not a you've abused your right of subscribing to my publication, and you just block them. Yeah. Luckily, I haven't had that problem yet.
All right. Any other student questions before we have all the students sign their names up and then we'll raffle off a t-shirt or two. Oh, Christy says I joined SBJ as a student in Texas. Yay. So for the SBJ committee, we were brainstorming ways to reward students who attend our events. So we're giving away 2 SPJ t-shirts at each of the SPJ education events this spring semester. So that's why I am mentioning the t-shirts. Oh, there's a good question in the chat for you also.
Yeah, I try and keep them 600 to 800 words. I think that we already have a big problem with newsletters in that they're not edited. So they're not most of these newsletters do not go through a professional editor. So I constantly have problems with typos myself, and it really pains me to have to admit that I have sent out newsletters that have contained typos that I haven't caught, and my student copy editors have not caught. So that's one of the downsides. But I think most newsletters run long at about like 1,000 to 1,500 words. And I am really tired of reading a newsletter that spends 3 paragraphs clearing their throat before they get to their main subject. I mean, and I think it's a real problem with the form, and it's something that's going to shake down as the form grows. People are going to realize, oh yeah, get rid of those first 3 paragraphs. You don't need them. We don't want them. Nobody's like, that's not why I'm here. I want to read what your focus is. Please focus right in. All the stuff that we teach. So I think the ideal length is 600 to 800 words. And if it's longer, I'll just link to the rest of my text on my website, like I did with that Seiji Ozawa piece.
Well, while people are thinking of their next question, I'm going to drop in the chat a Google form. This is just for students. If you would sign your name onto the Google form, and then we will raffle off the 2 t-shirts here in a second once everyone has signed. So this Google form is just for students. And I'm going to drop it in the chat here just in a second.
Tim, what mistakes have you made in the Substack?
Yeah,
What do you avoid?
yeah, good question. That's a really important question every time, right? Typos, definitely typos, and also like finishing and thinking I'm done, and or like saying, oh, I'll get back to this later Thursday night, and then it goes out automatically Friday, and I was like, oh, I needed one more pass at that. That went out just before I was really ready for it to go out. So, just your typical editorial workflow problems like that. Luckily, I have not misspelled anyone's name or an artist's name, or we've had some bad links, right? Some bad links have made it through, which I think looks really bad. Is you're asking someone to read your newsletter and your links are dead. That really does not inspire a lot of faith and trust in the author of the newsletter. So, but that kind of happens. Some of that's out of my control, but whenever I have someone proofread it, I say, please check all those links, make sure all those links work. And that's another thing that happens.
Do you find that a lot of people find your Substack just through search and stuff, or just like Substack recommends it for them? Or,
Yeah, so this
I mean, how do you
Substack,
think
yeah,
people find you?
right. So one of the ways that Substack is a good, useful platform in a way that it's gathered all these writers together, like I was saying, is writers are reading and recommending other writers all over the place. So if I'm following Seymour Hersh, I can instantly go see who he's following, right? And who he's recommending I read. And he will often show up in the notes column as recommending certain stuff or saying, oh, I just read this. This is really great. And the notes thing goes all day long, and you're seeing people, this is what people are reading all day long. And it's really interesting because it's just small enough now that I'm starting to see, oh, that person's getting a lot of attention. Like Lauren Huff out of Florida, she wrote this wonderful book last year. She's ex-Army, and she's just this gangbuster writer. She just has tons of personality in her writing. Hough, and she files a lot, like every week, several times a week, and she's very funny and very engaged. Hunter Harris is very funny, very engaged with pop culture. She writes like a dream. She just is like hilarious out of the gate. So it's often those writers get a lot of attention, and they get quoted a lot. And there's a way you go in and you can highlight their thing, and as you highlight it, it gives you a button that says, do you want to restack this or retweet it, right? Or reshare it. And it lets you reshare it, including the highlights. So you get to highlight like your pull quote, your favorite pull quote from the piece, and then you can add a comment on top. And you can try and be witty on top of it so that's the way that most people, I think, are finding me. And I'm finding that, there's different like sports or business or any other kind of writing. There's different stripes of music writers, right? There's the kind of music writer that really loves to cover what's trendy and what's celebrity driven and what the big controversy is. I'm more of a historian, so I really like digging deep into music history, and I really like figuring out how certain sounds, certain trends, certain styles actually show up in today's songs, but actually you can trace them back to the 60s or the 70s, right? That's really what I like to do as a music critic. That's a more specialized kind of thing. And I also am very clear, I'm not here to make a living. I'm not on Substack trying to pay my mortgage. And so I'm happy to start slow and just see where it goes. I don't really have like a goalpost that if I don't do this by X date, I'll quit. And it's like, I ran a blog for 15 years, you know. It was really hard to tell how many hits I was getting, who was reading. I did not get picked up a lot. I don't mind saying this to a group of other journalists, but you know, like most people, we write into the void, right? Like a big piece of the job is writing into the void. You often do not get any feedback to a lot of the writing that you do, right? You have to really get used to that. Substack, though, gives me all these great stats. I mean, I can see that 60% of my subscribers are opening and reading that email every single issue. That really makes me feel good, right? So I'm doing something right, and I'm happy if it's a slow burn.
So I have to ask the question, you said it's free, nothing's free. So what is Substack getting? Are they getting all the data? And is it clear that when people sign up for your Substack that they're giving away this data?
Well, they seem to have a business that mixes several different revenue streams, right? One is there are people like Hunter Harris making money on the thing, and Substack is getting 10% of that. Okay. We are all also, because of our specialties and our deep knowledge in certain areas, we are all contributing to the Substack brand. So it is kind of like joining a union or joining a team of like-minded people who we would be, you know, a lot of us would be doing this for no money or doing it for no money. And we are all enhancing the richness that is Substack. And I find myself visiting and spending lots of time in Substack because there's a lot of good writing there in Substack. And it's right at the phase right now where it's actually you can feel the promise welling up within it, right? Before Facebook became this giant hellhole of like a place where nobody wants to spend any time, it had some curious nooks, and it was a place to spend time at. And Substack is at that phase right now where I can go find new writers that I'm definitely going to follow and maybe even subscribe to, right? And that kind of sense of discovery, and things are happening here in an interesting way, in a different way than they've been happening in other spaces on the web so far. So they found a certain formula that has really made it work for them. You know, I'm sure the founders are all out in their yachts having a great time, whatever, and they're busy making money. And, you know, I'm happy to share if they're hosting my stuff, and if they want access to my subscriber list, I'm sure they have access to that. That seems like a trade-off I'm willing to make at this phase.
So I was gonna say, sometimes students will have a SoundCloud or somewhere that they post like podcasts or things like that. So with Substack, that could be just an additional way that you're publicizing the content that you're creating.
Right.
It's like
So
an
there
extra.
is this theory that you should diversify like as you go. Like you shouldn't just be Substack, that you should also post if you're a musician and you're posting audio, you should post audio on Substack and Soundscape and Bandcamp, and because the bigger your footprint, the easier it is for people to find you, right? And that makes a lot of sense to me. The new phase of development in the social media space that we're gone through is that we have these horrible raving maniacs take over Twitter and turn it into like that's not 1% of Twitter that's Nazi now. I had to leave Twitter. I just couldn't I could not bear it. It was not something I was willing to engage in anymore because of the racism and the anti-Semitism. So I've gone off Twitter completely, and I had built up a fair number of followers over the years, and that was no fun for me. But I'm not going to participate in a mud bath like that. So I just jumped. Um, and what we're seeing now is these different kinds of spaces emerging platforms. So Substack seems to me has thought through some of these angles very, very carefully. So yes, musicians are as welcome on Substack as they are on Bandcamp, but not many people know that Substack is hosting audio for free. And that will probably come a moment where there's going to be a tipping point. Like people are going to be uploading half hour of audio every day, and they're going to have to say, look, we need to start charging for this, and there'll be a threshold. But for now, right, it's like if you're a musician, I would totally jump over to Substack just to increase your footprint.
All right, Tim, I know you've got a train. The
Oh
infamous
yeah,
trains in
is it
Boston.
6:55?
Any
Oh my,
parting words? I
uh,
know. Any parting words before you go?
have a blast, subscribe, send me notes. It's been really fun talking. As you can tell, I love the sound of my own voice. I love talking. I'm happy to talk. And you can send me email and stuff through Angie, or I'll put my email up here. But it's been really an honor to talk to you guys. Oh, I know what the last word is. We're sponsoring. Is the conference we're sponsoring? Is it an SPJ conference?
Regional conference. Yes.
It's a regional conference, April
Regional
19th and
conference.
20th in Boston. Come visit us. We'd love to see you.